my existence.
Good morning, everybody. I'm still a little sick, so if it sounds like my nose is plugged or if I have to pause to like have a coughing fit or something, really sorry about that. This has been like probably the longest I've been sick since 2020, so I'm plowing through it and I'm getting through my work and we're still going to stream, still doing YouTube videos. Today we're talking about sound design plugins, kind of, I would say secret weapons, I guess. Like everybody has... Well, people who do sound design and do sound effects, they have library management software. We are not talking about that. Today, we're talking about tools that are maybe a little less known, a little more hands-on and creative. Obviously, the best tools you can have as a sound designer, your ears are the first, but then a microphone, let me see, field recorder, there, I put them all away, but stuff to record sounds, super important. Like really kind of the bread and butter of any sound designer is the ability to record stuff that they need or record raw material to create stuff that they need. But today, really, we're talking about plugins that can help you generate sounds. And it's like maybe stuff, I don't know why, like this, a lot of sound designers don't use these tools. I use them when they come in handy, which is rare, but like when they do work, they work really well. So they're not always like the panacea, like, oh, this is what you need to, you know, to get started as a sound designer or step your game up. They're more of like specialty tools, kind of like, you know, if you've done any construction work, like there's special tools for like tile setting, you know, like you're going to use like a laser level. And for framing, you might have like a framing nailer, a 21-degree framing nailer. Like these are specialty tools for people who have a use case for them. So let's jump in. The very first thing, I guess I should do my normal spiel about like what you're hearing. You're hearing me through a Rode NT1, and this is running into Pro Tools. I've got a Pro Q3. I've got Cedar Screenvox, which Cedar has given me an affiliate link. It's in the video description. If you need the world's best broadband noise reduction, it'll, you know, it gives me a little kickback if you buy it from that link. Running through Auto Compressor, this is a plugin I made specifically for my YouTube streams, but I've been using it in other things as well. This is an automatic compressor with automatic makeup gain, super simple controls, and a transparent multi-stage safety limiter. And then I'm also using this plugin from SoundRadix. This is called Mute-O-Matic. What this will do is it'll actually mute the microphone when you hit play. So for streaming, you know, if I'm listening on my monitors, I don't necessarily want the audio coming through my microphone. So instead of having to remember to hit mute every time I hit play, this will do it for you. I don't think we'll need this though, so I might bypass this because I don't think we're going to be playing back much. We're going to be playing with stuff. So good morning to everybody on the stream. It looks like we've got Zakar, House of Jen, Mike Wax. So I'm sure more people will join in as is allowed. And then if you watch this on a replay, make sure you drop a comment there. And especially if you have suggestions for like tools that I'm not going to talk about, maybe one that you like to use, it'd be great to kind of know that. So I'm going to put on some headphones so that I can hear. And of course, they're all tangled up. There we go. And let's see, mute my Audient Aurea, mute. So the very first thing we're going to talk about is, welcome Francois. Oh, Krotos, what? That's cool. Well, we're going to be talking about a lot of Krotos stuff. Actually, since Krotos is here, we might as well start with the Krotos tool. So let's start with Wepaoniser. And for each of these, I'm going to talk about kind of what it does and the strengths and weaknesses and how I use it. So Wepaoniser is a sample playback engine, and I've tested Krotos Studio, and it just doesn't have the granularity that I I like in Weaponizers. So I still use Weaponizer anytime I have an action film with a lot of either gunfire or combat. I always make stuff in Weaponizer, because instead of stacking sound effects 10 tracks deep or 8 tracks deep for a single gunshot, I can quickly load in round robin samples in Weaponizer, and I can play it back with my keyboard, which is really nice. So I'm going to unmute that and just hear what we hear. Oh, and I need to, yeah, you guys can hear that. I need to set up my headphones really fast so I can hear this. I think I had a separate output. Oh, maybe it's the, it might be the level actually. Yeah, that's what it is. It's the level. I had a, there we go. We had a power outage from a transformer blowing. A turkey flew into the power lines. And so all my interface stuff got reset. Okay, so here we go. This is a bullpup sample. I was working on, let's see, how can I not blow the, and give any like proprietary stuff. I was working on an action film with a lot of skilled operators, and skilled operators in a firefight don't fire full auto mostly. They usually use single fire mode. So here's a suppressed weapon, and you can see in Weaponizer you have 4 tabs: onset, body, thump, and tail. And actually on a keyboard you can play each of these with different keys. It doesn't show the keyboard on here, but I'll tell you what I'm playing. First I'm going to play a C. That plays all the samples back at the same time. Next I'm going to play a C sharp or D flat, and that only plays the onset sound. Next I'm going to play a D. That's just the body sound. Next I'm going to play a D sharp, which is just the thump. You can also add a synth to that. And then E is the tail. So again, C plays all the samples back. And what's really cool about Weaponizer is you can set these to be round robin so that they cycle kind of randomly. And another cool thing is you can actually turn on burst mode. It doesn't quite, you know, it plays them back monophonically, so there's no tail. So it's not always super useful. But it's possible to do that for any kind of rifle. So I've also got impacts. And it's nice to just be able to hit a keyboard and, like, you know, cycle through stuff. It also makes it really fun because you can actually play a scene on your keyboard. So I like that interactive kind of sound design where it's not just dragging and dropping from a library. It's actually like, no, it's like playing a performance, and you can get some really cool kind of happy accidents that way. We've got Glock 19, and it can be a little slow sometimes to load stuff. There's also been a couple of glitches, I guess, which I've kind of talked with Krotos about, and they've unfortunately kind of said, like, sorry, that's just how it is for now. Yeah, so there's this. The samples, like, you kind of have to be prepared for where the samples are. There's also presets. Let's look at some of the presets. So you've got, in weapons, you've got bullet flybys, you got bullet impacts, gun Foley, real world guns, and then sci-fi guns. If we check out like an AK-47 burst, let's do a burst outdoors. So that sound, unfortunately, it was like a reverb impulse response glitch. That's one of the glitches I've been talking with Krotos about. And yeah, it's kind of annoying. It's actually, if I remember correctly, it's one of the, I think I found out it was one of these plugins. So you can add plugins on each channel: onset, body, thump, and tail. There's EQ, compressor, limiter, saturation. Some of them are glitched out though. So I think what's happened is, like, this is kind of depreciated for Krotos. So they're, you know, maybe they'll work on it a little bit to kind of get it back where it needs to be. But yeah, so here's an M4A1. And there's that glitch again. I think it's a saturated. Yeah, there we go. And let's just look at some of the like the bullet. Oh, actually, we can look at some of the magic stuff too. Some of this stuff is kind of cool. But that's not good. Gosh, which one is it? There we go. It sounds pretty mono in headphones. The bullet buys are, or the impacts are pretty good. The bullet buys are fine. There's like bullet pass here. It's kind of weird. I usually end up making my own for these varied bullet flybys. You can kind of hear what these sound like if it actually loads. It's probably not going to be able to find these. A lot of these presets I made in like the sound effects edit session. So it's, I think what's happening is it's trying to find the samples, and they actually live inside the Pro Tools folder, because you can actually drag and drop samples from your sound library. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so we're not going to look at that one maybe. It's probably going to just do this the entire time, which is really super annoying. Sure, yeah, you know what? Look there. Let's get out of that. Sniper not suppressed. Uzi. Let's look at the Uzi one. Hopefully that loads. And you can change the fire rate. That's more like an M3 grease gun now. So pretty cool. And there's other things that it's used for, like footsteps. People use this for footsteps. Boots on carpet heel toe. Let's check that out. Not that great. I mean, it's something. There's something there, but yeah. So that's Wepaoniser. Really useful for repeated transient sounds. You know, weapons or punches. Like I tend to prefer cutting hand-to-hand combat by hand and really, you know, making each punch and block sound unique. So maybe not as useful for that with my workflow, but for weapons, it's really cool. And it's great for building unique weapons. Like if you have a sci-fi, you can add blasts and sword shings and all kinds of stuff to the actual weapon sound. So I think let's wrap it up on Wepaoniser by Krotos. Great tool, maybe a little glitchy, maybe some further development work that needs to happen there to get it up to snuff. So let me look at our comments real quick and see if there's anything. Do I use phase plant? No. Igniter. Oh, I need to check out Igniter because I have Igniter, but it's like another one of those kind of glitchy, not that great. Cliff says, when using tools like Wepaoniser, are you printing out the sounds? Okay, so here's how I like to use Wepaoniser. I will actually record the MIDI. I'll make it active and I'll show you. Like, I'll just record some stuff. Oh. Whatever. That's fine. They're footsteps. But the nice thing about this is, let's say the director says, I don't really like the guns. The guns sound kind of off to me. Can you change the gun sounds out? Well, if I was cutting them by hand, I would say, of course I can. And then I'd have to go and spend a day recutting the guns. But with Wepaoniser, I can actually just say, hey, you know what? I've got all these MIDI notes placed where they need to go. Let me just swap out the sounds. And then I can do different variables like, hey, what about this gun? What about this gun? All the placement, all the timeline placement of where the sounds need to start is in the session. It doesn't have to change. It's really just a matter of changing the actual samples. And furthermore, what I can do is I can make 4 stereo audio tracks and then watch this. So if I go here and I go to plugin and I go to Wepaoniser, I can record each of those 4 categories on its own separate track, which is really handy because, you know, for a distant gunshot, you'll need more tail. And for a close like super close gunshot, you will need more of the onset, the dry fire sound. Let me just load. I'll load in one of their factory presets. Let's go. How about a powerful handgun? We'll do that one. And I'll just record this so you can kind of see. Actually, let's do this. We'll call it onset, body. Oops. Learn how to type correctly, kids. Thump and tail. And now I'm going to record it. So after I'm done, you know, with this and I'm happy with it, then I would record it. But I wouldn't record it until I was sure the director was like, yep, that sounds good. Cool. So let me make this inactive now. And then, oops, no, these need to be active. And I need to send them to you guys too, because you're on a different bus. There we go. So now if I solo each of these, here's the body. Here's the thump. And then here's the tail. So where that becomes useful is if I have a bunch of gunshots and they need different perspectives, I can do this. You know, I can lower certain aspects of, maybe I'd mute the thump, you know, on a distant shot, have the tail be bigger. And it's nice, you can give it variety. This is similar to like how video games code the gunshots. They have different layers, and depending on where you're at, there will be a different mix of the layers. So if you've done any video game audio, it's kind of a little similar to that, just in a linear fashion. Okay, we got to get to a different tool. I like Wepaoniser is good, and Krotos is here, so I feel like we got to, you know, make a little bit of a show of that. But there's more that I want to talk about, so we're going to move on to the next tool, and that is Turbine. This is by Boom, and I only bought this because I worked on a film with a certain airplane, and it was like the 90% of the film takes place on this airplane. So it's like, well, I don't want to just cut in a, you know, couple of layers of this airplane. I want to be able to adjust the thrust and, you know, be able to fly it around the room a little bit. So let's listen to what Turbine does. It's kind of an interesting tool. So it might be, if it's too loud, let me know and I can bring the volume down. Oh yeah. So you get the idea. I was purposely not talking so you could kind of hear what happens. This is a turbine simulator, and you can change like the different harmonics and everything. It does have different presets, which are really handy. It's got civil, passenger, and private. Private would be your smaller airplanes. And then it does have military. C-17, B-52, B-2, B-1, C-5M, Super Galaxy. I've actually ridden in one of those. And fighters, A-10 Thunderbolt. Actually, probably my favorite. Let's just listen to that. I do want to hear this one, because I'm pretty familiar with the sound.
This is the Turbine simulator. This is a simulation of the turbine. It's a
Okay, that's actually that's pretty close, I would say. Yeah, it doesn't have the brrr of the gun, but the thrust the twin turbines on the back, I would say that's pretty close. Cool. So turbine is useful for engines, especially like plane engines or anything with a turbine. You could probably use it for spacecraft. And you can, adjust all the different characteristics. You can, with simulation on, you can actually fly it around, which is kind of nice. But if you need like static engine, like you're on board the aircraft, then this is really useful. And you can adjust the angle and the character and the harmonics. You can actually change the max RPM of stuff. And it's got different presets. So turbine is a really specific, super specific tool for turbines, but it's kind of like, what else do you have for options? There's not much. So I would say get turbine if you're doing something with some kind of jet, or it's like a central character. It's a little, I forget how much, I think it's $200-300. That's kind of what most of these run. So it's very specialized. Not everybody needs it, but if you do need it, it's kind of the only game in town. So that one's by Boom. Boom has great sound libraries as well. Okay, so that's Turbine. Let me just go through some comments real quick. What do you think about using SoundMiner Radium? I gave up on SoundMiner. It was just it was overkill. I use Soundly for my library management, and then basically my goal with sound design is to get the sounds into Pro Tools as early as possible, so I can make custom contact patches and stuff for triggering sounds, or like use Wepaoniser where I literally drag and drop. So I played a little bit around with Radium, and it was like, I don't know, I didn't quite get on with it as I enough to pay for the continual upgrades of SoundMiner. Okay. Yeah, you can route the outputs of most of these. And Paul says, hey, Tom, just discovered you Americans call chips as fries. Weird. It is super weird. Yeah. We also call biscuits cookies, which doesn't really make sense. I prefer biscuits, but, what's the saying? When in Rome? Let's talk about Edward Foley. It's actually called something Edward Ultimate Suite. This is a Foley plugin for footsteps. You can also do cloth, and you can do cloth at the same time, which is something I do somewhat often. So let's say you have a project where they don't have a Foley budget, or just a couple of the scenes need some Foley. That happens, I would say, pretty regularly. If you, gosh, I need to remember how to add this on here. If you find yourself needing quick, something you can just tap out on a keyboard, these Foley plugins are great for that. However, it doesn't sound anywhere near as good as a real Foley artist, and it even doesn't sound quite as good as cutting it by hand. So you have to temper your enthusiasm for spending more money on a plugin with that. Like, it's going to sound kind of rigid and sampled. So they can be useful in some situations, and in other situations, like, just cut it by hand and you're going to be further ahead. So here I've loaded the shoes and the cloth. I need to make sure my MIDI channel covers both of them. Let's see. Let's just mute this. Yeah, okay, we've got Foley. One nice thing about these is you can change the mix. I've got a foot pedal for this on my keyboard, so you can see here. Let me unmute this. I got backpack and shirt. Oh, it's still muted. Shoot, I'm like all lost here. And you can, so this is wood, sneakers and wood, and it's backpack. I can go up to concrete. Oh, sorry, it was sneakers, wood, and shirt. And the mix should really go left to right. It's a little weird to have it in the middle like that. So I'm going to go from shirt to backpack, and I'm also going to go from wood to concrete. So what the keyboard does here, you can see C down here, C2 is slow. E and F are medium. G and A are walk. B and C3 are run. And then D3 and E3 are stare. Then you also have scrapes up here. There we go. Jump lands, stomps. Let's listen. Let's mute the cloth for now. Uh-oh. This is one downside with these plugins is they can be a little bit touchy when you start doing stuff. There we go. Okay. So this is a stair, I think. All the way down to the quietest. So it can be useful. It's nice to be able to play it, you know, in sync, but you end up having to edit the MIDI anyways to get it perfectly in sync. So good in a pinch, as good as cutting by hand, no, and as good as a Foley artist, hell no. A real Foley artist is going to be able to match the character's movements and intentions way better than any plugin can ever do it. It's one of the hardest things to do, and I have a lot of respect for Foley artists. So I would say don't use this to replace them. Just use it if, you know, there's no budget for them or whatever. Let's go through some questions here. Do you think that Foley could be mixed with Wepaoniser to randomize the sound a bit more? Maybe, I don't know. Zakar says, saying cutting by hand, you mean using audio from sound libraries and matching them with video. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly correct. So that's Edward Foley. We're going to make that inactive. As I make each one inactive, it should clear things up in the session, make it a little faster. This is a beastly computer too, and it's just, you know, you start adding all these sample playback and fancy whiz bangers, and it slows things down. Okay, Whoosh. This is a little bit of an older one. I have used this on especially like commercials and sci-fi stuff. This is by Tonsturm. And this is a Whoosh creation engine, which is very cool. And one really interesting thing about this, I think you can trigger it with the keyboard. Let's see. Yeah, you can. But it also triggers... Oh, it's just going to keep going now. It can also trigger by hitting play. And so what you do is you set the duration on your Whoosh, and you can see if I bring this down, it's gonna go a lot faster. So there's different presets to get you started, but it's kind of another sample playback deal. So you have your mixer, which is the level of different things. You have source and impact. You can route things. You can duck the Whoosh from the impact. Basically, when the impact happens, you can duck the Whoosh. You can also go with no impact. So there's 4 sources. You can see this is set to creature low groan. This is set to wide low. This is highlands. I think this is like a wind thing. And then inwards click. And then impacts. Impacts are just like the boom part of it. You can go here, like go all the way source, and it'll just be Whoosh. But it still has the duck. All right, let's just look at maybe some of the magic stuff. I think there's some... oh, it's not even spelled right. Magic spells. Let's just look at some of these. Well, that sounds a little bit Harry Potter-y. Cool. Nice. That one has like almost no impact, which is good. yeah, so these are good, you know. And these pair really good with realistic sounds. Like if you have a car whipping by, you can add one of these on top. And the fact that you can change the duration, you can also change the shape of them. So I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I've done this, but there's a, no, it's not range. Is it speed, distance, or maybe it was curve. There was some way, if anybody's used this, please, oh, position. Yeah, okay, the position. This is going to be the peak. So you can make a shorter head and a longer tail, or you can do the opposite. So let's move the position all the way over here. No, that didn't quite work. I thought this was it, but maybe not. Yeah, that just offsets things, which is not what you want. Oh, maybe it was this. There's like a range here. It's been forever since I've used this, so I'm kind of like spacing on. Oh, maybe it was the range? Turning that down? No. Make shape. Gosh. There was a way where you could change the position of it and like the hits would follow, but I'm spacing on it right now. So that's one thing about only using these every once in a while, is that you forget how they actually work. But there's all kinds of options to change in here. There's like some processing where the Doppler happens. Speed, distance and speed are two things that, like for buys, anything Doppler, you have like the further you are from the source, like if you're this, well, I mean, 50 feet away and something's going to buy really fast, the ramp of the sound is actually kind of like just a little hump. But if you're 4 feet away and it's going by very fast, the ramp is like a big spike like that. So you can kind of simulate that with Whoosh, with the distance control. And then, yeah, speed and distance are the two. You can actually change this to miles per hour, which is very cool. So that's Wepaoniser by, or sorry, that is Whoosh by Tonsturm. I'm sure there's an updated version of this. This runs in Reactor 6. So if you don't have the complete bundle or just Reactor, not going to work. There's other cool things in Reactor that I have collected over the years. No, I don't want to save the changes. Like different glitch grainers, like all kinds of interesting stuff. There's some really interesting, weird, gosh, I'm trying to remember where they are. It was like some kind of, it wasn't gravity. Reactor can be great for building your own stuff. So if you're into building your own tools, you can totally do that. Let me just try to find some of these. Maybe it was, no, it wasn't in here. Was it this one? Yeah. Okay, here's a really cool granular sampler. So you can make all kinds of cool, weird, out there. This is good for sci-fi stuff. It's not really good for realistic sound design. So check out Reactor if you haven't. Or if you have it and it's just like sitting on your drive and you're not using it, Reactor is super cool for sound design. Okay. So I guess we could do Dehumaniser now. This is another Krotos tool. It's another one of these sort of, it can be a little glitchy every once in a while, but it does some interesting stuff. It's really good for monster vocals. So you can take, and I'll just actually mute. It's basically like a pitch shifter and granular, you know, it's got a sample trigger here, which is kind of cool. So it's great for creatures that need to be performed live, especially. Some of them are more useful than others, but yeah, can sound a little bit digital. That's one downside with this. But if you're mixing it with like a vampire, for example, vampire would probably have a regular clean sound, and then you would just kind of mix in, maybe that's not quite an octave. There. Yeah, something like that, you know? Maybe like you mute some of this weirder stuff and turn it down. So yeah, it's not super low latency, but it's low enough to where you could actually perform through it. So Dehumaniser, good for, actually we're coming up on Halloween, so it'd be good for Halloween type stuff. Reformer Pro is kind of another one that is a little bit, it's useful for layering samples on top of a sound, and you can kind of change where this puck is, and it will, yeah, it'll change. You can also like say, hey, I want this to be, the bison is a really good one. Takes a while to load it in, but it'll track. You can change the tracking speed. It'll track your voice, and it will, you can set the threshold too, so like noise, you know, doesn't get processed, which is kind of nice. But yeah, it's good for live stuff. You could add like a little gross squishy layer to your voice, animal layer, electronic, maybe it's a robot. So this is good for layering. You know, you could even do both of these actually at the same time. Let's see if we can find a good robot. Experimental alien language. Let's do glitch. Glitch. Oh, there we go. Interesting. Yeah. So now we're actually adding like a pitch shift from Dehumaniser. Probably need like a threshold with this. Doesn't seem like the threshold actually works. That's okay though. You get the idea, right? So these are good for processing a voice to sound different, you know. It doesn't do organic stuff as well because you are merging things with samples or you're shifting, and so you get these digital gremlins that pop up. And for that stuff, again, cutting something by hand, if you're doing a sweetener that's like a lion or a Bengal tiger or bison or whatever, cutting them by hand may get you a more natural, it will get you a more natural result. So all of these are convenience plugins that you don't need. You know, they are like specialty tools that could easily be supplanted by you doing the work by hand and cutting things in, as we have for, you know, the past 100 years probably in sound editing. But they're fun. They're fun tools to use. And if it makes the job a little more fun as they hopefully develop, you know, a lot of these seem like they're kind of abandoned, especially the Krotos ones. Like they just seem like they want to go for Krotos Studio, and I get that. But it's nice to get hands-on tools where you can like mangle stuff, perform it in real time, and turn it into more of a performance versus a just drag and drop, copy paste, you know, that kind of thing. So let me think. Is there any other ones we could talk about? We've got a little bit of time here. Let me see if I've got any other. I'll just do question mark. Can I name a track question marks? I can. In my instruments. Let's see. I have used Absinthe a little bit. I've used Battery a little bit to do things, do interesting things. Trying to think of other stuff. Yeah, not really. I mean, I'm not seeing stuff that's like, oh yeah, that one. I talked a little bit about Reactor and some of the other stuff. So yeah, I mean, I've used Massive and some of the other complete synth plugins for like user interface sounds. They can be really good for that. Then you're getting into synthesis, which is fine. You know, that is definitely a part of sound design, but it's more of like, you know, universal sound design like people would do for creating a synthesizer patch. So these can be useful. Really what you want to do for user interface sounds is get it to where the envelopes are very short. Like a synth preset is not really going to work. Let me see if I even have. I've got quite a bit of stuff actually. Most of these are for scoring work. Yeah, I don't think. Oh, let's see what this one is. Machine heartbeat. Oh, I need to have. This is not an instrument track. Doing like sci-fi stuff is always, it's some of the most fun when it comes to sound design because you're really using your imagination. So getting them to where you can play the sounds, and I was kind of messing with like the mod wheel and the expression pedal, are great because you can actually kind of perform things. I'm trying to think of other stuff I had. Let's see what this one is. Yeah, so for like, you know, ship interiors. This was for like an alien spaceship, I think. And I've got different presets. By using the mod wheel, you can, or sorry, this is the expression pedal. You can change the pitch of the ship. So if it needs to accelerate or something. Trying to remember what project that was for. Oh, that's right. That's right. There was aliens that took people away. So yeah, it's good to have presets because it helps you kind of go through stuff. Yeah, so that's Massive. Massive is great for sci-fi stuff. And you've got different oscillators and filters and routing and all kinds of, you can get super, you know, crazy with your routing matrix and everything. And then just being able to control stuff, you know, by hand with picture is like the key. Instead of cutting, dragging and dropping, the workflow is really performing the sounds in sync with the picture, kind of like you would with Foley, which is really nice. It's a nice change from just dragging and dropping from a library. We have a question here. What are your favorite effects plugins? Favorites? I don't know that, I mean, it depends on the project. Because some, you know, a sci-fi project is going to require different tools than an action movie with a bunch of shooting and punching and dying and lamenting and tearing of clothes and stuff like that. So it really depends on the project. I think Weaponiser is probably the most useful of the ones that we have talked about today. But I mean, if you have something with a turbine in it, turbine is going to be more useful. And that's why it kind of varies based on the project. So I don't know what you guys are working on, but try to really the best thing. And I try to push this for most of my videos. Don't spend your money until you need to. Because it's easy to fall into the gear acquisition syndrome where you're like, you know, somebody shows a tool like any one of the tools I showed today or a different tool. Spectral layers is really hot right now. So it's easy to get caught up in that hype of like, oh, there's this new thing. It's only $300. Ooh, you know, here, let's just spend all our money on this stuff. And don't do that. Wait till you need the tool and then pay for it. That's what I like to do. If I'm working on something where it's like, hey, one of these tools is going to save me time, which then makes me more money. Can I justify spending the money? Sure. I'll actually write it out. I have a little notepad and I'll be like, okay, this is $300. How much time is this going to save me? What am I charging my hourly rate for this? Maybe, you know, my hourly rate's $100 an hour, or it's 60 or 70 or 125, whatever. I'll write that out. Say, well, this plugin will save me 5 hours. Duh, that's an easy $300 purchase. If you can't do that, it's really just for your own ego and feelings of, you know, keeping up with the Joneses. So don't fall into that trap of buying stuff just because you saw a TikTok about it or whatever you kids watch these days. Just make sure you can quantify the expense and say, yeah, this is worth the spend. So each one of these that I've talked about may not be worth the spend for you guys, and that's totally fine. The best thing you can do is get to the point in your skills where the tools are limiting you. If you get to that point, that's when you start spending money on things because the technology is actually slowing you down. And so you upgrade the technology to speed you back up, and it just makes you more profitable. So headphones can come off now. Yeah, I'm good at this point. I showed you guys the tools I wanted to. If you guys have any questions or comments or suggestions like, hey, I really like this tool, why don't you talk about it? I'm going to go another 10 minutes and then say goodbye so I can get to work. Can also maybe tell you guys about some of the stuff I've been working on besides just shows that I'm editing. I have begun the process of creating some online courses. So it's going to take a long time because I want to do it right and I want to make sure there's enough meat on the bone for people. But I've been asked about like training and classes and like basically furthering the education part of my channel. And I do, like, I really believe in education, and really that's why I started this channel. So I will be offering some courses on my website that will be interactive courses. There will be video content, quizzes, probably some trophies or some kind of something to where it's not just, because I remember online classes and they can be super boring. And then by the end, you'll get a certificate. So it won't be like an accredited university, but it will be something where like I grade the work. You know, there's probably going to be some one-on-one time where I'm like talking with people and, you know, building their skills up, but it'll be like kind of like an online training course. Actually, course is, and they'll go from beginner to like super advanced. So the beginner one will be like, hey, you're just getting started. Here's the basics. And then the more advanced ones are like, you have Pro Tools, you have Isotope, you have these tools, but now you need to know how to really, you know, use them effectively. So that's kind of what I've been working on my side, you know, outside of normal work and the YouTube stuff. And then I've also got kind of an interesting video that I'll probably release this week. It's a little silly, but it's also pretty serious and has to deal with like the AI tools that we have available. And there's like, if you go on Facebook or forums are kind of for old guys, which I guess includes me now. There's like, you get a lot of people with their head in the sand on these AI tools and what they're going to mean for dialogue editors and sound re-recording mixers in the future, saying, well, they're terrible and they're never going to, my job's safe. I don't think our jobs are safe. I think there's some real risk out there, especially looking past the 5-year mark. If you're 55, 60 and you're about to retire, like, dude, you are solid. Just finish your career, get out, go sip pina coladas in Acapulco and be happy that you got out while you could. For the rest of us, we're going to have to figure out how to work with these tools and how to stay relevant. And so it's kind of a demonstration of one of the tools that I'd say is the most impressive as far as taking audio that is completely unusable and making it at least usable. So that'll come out on Thursday. And then, I've been working on, my normal kind of day-to-day work. And then this course, the courses, the first one is intro, and then the advanced ones, it's taken a lot of time. So they will be there. But that's kind of what I have in the works. Let me see if there's any stuff we could cover here. Jay says he's working on the horror challenge for Sundance Collab. That's cool. Have you tried UV Whoosh over Tonsturm? I'm trying to remember if I tried it. I don't remember. I think I did, and it was fine. I like the as you call it, Tonsturm, because it just has a really aggressive sound. Like it slaps you in the face. And I like that. I like when it's weird. So I do sound design quite a bit of sound effects editing. And there's like two halves of my career. So half of my career is doing sound effects and sound design. And that's mostly indie stuff. Although I've done plenty of union stuff that's sound effects. And I have clients that they're like, Tom's the sound effects guy. They know me as the sound effects guy, which is fine. But then the other side of my career is dialogue editing. And that's like where my bigger credits are, like 1923 and John Wick 4 and Outer Banks and all that stuff is like dialogue ADR editing. Those clients have no idea that I do sound effects. And I can pretty comfortably move back and forth between them. So I kind of have my feet in both worlds, sound effects and dialogue. And it's kind of weird because usually you specialize. And if you don't specialize, people will not hire you. That's what I've always been told. So I have to be very careful. And like the sound effects clients only know me for sound effects. I'm going to keep it that way. And the dialogue clients only know me for dialogue. And I need to keep it that way. Because as soon as you say, I can do both, they're like, see you later. We don't need a generalist. If you're a generalist, you should be a supervising sound editor, which I was, or a re-recording mixer, which I also was. But I don't want to live in LA, so it's like you can't really do those remotely. So just a hired gun, sound effects, or dialogue, depending on who's hiring me. Tom Jane asks, do you think effects and mixing is at a risk to AI? I think that's a great question. So let's talk. I mean, we got time for this. AI is such a big beast to wrestle. This is great. This could be like a whole, it should probably, maybe next week I'll do a stream on just AI. Let's talk about who's at risk first for AI. Who's already really been kind of maybe pushed out a little bit is ADR recordists or ADR mixers. We don't do as much ADR now as we used to do 5 years ago, 20 years ago was like, you'd have hundreds of lines for a feature. The tools we have for rescuing difficult audio have really cut back on the need for ADR. So the first people to be kind of axed by AI, ADR. That's, you know. The next is going to be dialogue editors, because you can take a guide track and run it through some of these tools, and what you get is pretty good. And these tools are in their infancy. So in 5 years, what are they going to be able to do? I really see a time where the picture editor can just run all the dialogue tracks through some kind of AI thing, and it's going to spit out a professional, polished sounding dialogue stem. So next is going to be dialogue editors, the mixers. And that's me. I'm on the chopping block. So yeah, second, there you go. Dialogue, so ADR first, then dialogue. Sound effects are going to be last. Really, sound effects and re-recording mixers, like overall re-recording mixers, not dialogue specialists, but like people who understand how to mix both dialogue and sound effects and music, of course. Because there is so many subtle things that an AI is not going to be able to necessarily do. Maybe eventually, but like that's going to take longer. And really, sound effects editing is probably the most immune to AI, because it involves knowing your library, knowing context, and a lot of creative decision making that is also technical, but more like taste oriented. So you can train an AI on cleaning stuff. You know, here's how clean dialogue should sound. But you can't really, not yet anyways, you can't train it to emotionally compartmentalize things and turn that into a resulting sound. That connection is going to take longer. So sound effects specialists, I feel like, are going to have a longer career looking forward than dialogue editors will. And re-recording mixers, probably it's going to be tough. Like, which one goes first, sound effects or mix? Because we already have AI mastering, where you upload your music track and say more bass on the master, or more mids, or punchy, whatever, you know. Like, AI can take prompts and affect the output. So there's probably a realm where you upload stems, or even a Pro Tools session maybe, and say, I want a sound effects forward mix. And, you know, and a couple hours later you get it back. Okay, I like that, but at this time code, I want to do that. You know, there's going to be something like that. So the power is going to go to the directors and producers. They're already using these AI tools for VFX to skip from doing ADR. They are cloning actors' voices. So there's a lot of AI already being used, and saying, my job is safe, I'm not worried, I think is just, it's foolish. It's like, you know, in history, there's been times where there's been a technological revolution, and there's always those people who say, not worried about it, nothing's going to happen. And then they just get blasted by, like, the world just passes them by. So it's okay, I guess, if you want to be a blacksmith and be making hand-forged square nails with your anvil and your forge, that's cool. I'm sure there's going to be a market for that kind of artisanal work. But the majority of content that's produced will probably use the technology at hand, which is going to be driven by artificial intelligence. So yeah, let's go through some comments. It's 9 o'clock, so I got to get off here. Jay says, if you think 50 is old, there's not much I can tell you, except I can run circles around people half my age and save money is all I can tell you. Stop eating animals if you care about your heart. I appreciate that. I mean, I'm going to be 40 this year, and I know other 40-year-olds who like can barely get out of bed. So I think it just is based on your lifestyle and genetics. So yeah, I feel old sometimes, and that's okay. It's okay to be old. As far as eating animals, I have chickens. I regularly kill and eat the chickens. I also go fishing, and I stab the fish in the head and bleed them and eat them. And I love meat. I eat meat all the time. So I'm not going to stop eating animals. I figure, do I want to live to be 80 in this broken world where nobody's going to have a retirement, and anybody under the age of 35 will never own a house? Does living to 90 in that world sound good to me? Not really. Like if I make it to 60 and conk out from a heart attack because I've been stuffing cholesterol down my throat for for 60 years, I think that would be a fine time to go. I don't think I want to persist in a completely broken, you know, miserable world. So I'm not saying like I want to conk out early, but if the choices are live to 90 and be immobile and not able to enjoy stuff, or live to 60 and basically race to the finish line with my head on fire, naked, and, you know, with clogged arteries and broken knees, that's the way I want to go. I want to go out like Evel Knievel. Okay. Russ says, yeah, these tools feel pretty disheartening as it is already. I agree. Would you say that the rise of AI in the audio world having a split discipline is a good idea to stay relevant? Yeah, I think so. I think people who can think about this. Think about this, Jen. What animals end up surviving things like climate change and nuclear war? Coyotes and cockroaches. Cockroaches especially. They're greasy little guys that just hide in the shadows and kind of, they adapt to their world that changes. So I think people that can roll with the punches and adapt to the changing world are going to be fine, as, you know, you're just used to kind of adapting to your environment. Like coyotes will actually eat sticks. They'll eat dirt sometimes if they can't find food. So be a coyote. Don't be like what's an animal that goes extinct? Oh, you know what? Pandas. Don't be a panda where you have to have special bamboo and you got to have just the right temperature, and like you're not mating because of like, well, the conditions aren't quite right for that, and I just don't feel like it, and I have a headache. Don't be a panda. Be a coyote and be out there eating sticks and, you know, making tons of little coyote pups and stealing cats off people's porches. That's what you want to be if you want to survive. Okay. Mike says, I'm at the point where there's talk about editors just doing everything, cut, then mix and color, and their mix just being processed through Premiere. Yeah, exactly. Yep, that happens. Lucas says, do you have any advice for someone starting out as a freelance sound designer? Luca, I would suggest if you're starting out as a freelance sound designer, take all the jobs you can, do a great job. Don't shortchange jobs because they don't have a good budget. And then take notes. That's a big thing, is be kind of a punching bag for people and be willing to take notes without getting hurt or getting your ego brought down. Just, you know, if people say, hey, I don't like this, take it, you know. Well, what don't you like about it? Let's fix that. Don't be a yes man or yes woman where you're like, oh, whatever you say, you know, not like that, but like be willing to try stuff and, you know, sharpen your skills. Because every time you deal with client notes or a supervisor that's disappointed in you, that is a growth opportunity. You know, pain is weakness leaving your body. Anybody who's played football, the coach would say that type of thing. You know, pain is weakness leaving the body. So look at the crucible that you're going through as a way to temper the steel and make your skills sharp and make your personality able to withstand really some brutal creative input from people, because that's what you'll get. Good question. Dudo, do you think sound design and sound perspective could be taught? Yeah, of course. Yeah, we will go through. I've already got some videos going through sound design, and the courses I'm making, when we do sound effects, we're gonna dive really deep on that stuff. Jay says, just be happy, dude. I am so happy. I'm such a happy. I would say I'm one of the happiest people I know. I'm also very honest. So if it comes across that I'm unhappy, not at all. I am so happy to live in this world and have all the opportunities and have had all the great experiences I've had. But I also recognize that this is a broken world and, you know, it's not perfect. So while I'm happy to be here and I love everything, even the bad stuff, I still love it. I am not a blind person to the realities of the world that we live in. Let's see. Turning 38 can feel the effects of sitting. Oh yeah, definitely. Get out, pump some iron, go for a run. I like to build stuff. I like to work with hammers and saws and stuff like that. I also like to go hiking and go gold prospecting, go fishing, just generally be a wild person in the woods is really good. So you got to get out of your studio and move around. Mateo, did you speak about saturation for sound effects? No, we didn't talk about that. We talked about some special tools. You can go back and watch this stream when it's done. I could rewatch it now if you want. But yeah, so that, yeah, saturation is useful, but we didn't talk about that. I think all good questions. Thank you guys so much for all of the comments and chats and stuff. It's been really great. This is why I like doing live stuff, because it's really a conversation with a group of people instead of just me talking. And I feel like we covered a lot of ground with some of the specialty tools. Not all of them are going to be useful, but in a pinch, if you have something that needs Foley, or you need to trigger a bunch of weapon sounds, or make a turbine sound, or special whooshes, or change a voice, these are all tools that can help you do that. And yeah, so I think I'm going to sign off. I'm good. I covered everything. You guys were great. It was nice to be a little bit social before I dig into another day of dialogue editing, which I'm thankful for. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for a video on Thursday of this week. And then I'll see you next week for a stream. Maybe we could do a stream about AI. So if you have ideas for that, specific questions, drop a comment. If you're a member and you're in the members only Discord, let's start a discussion about AI. I might even make a channel for AI, because that can be like its own thing. So I'll use that as kind of jumping off points for the discussion next week. And it'll be kind of cool to just talk about something that is like it's like a 500-pound purple gorilla in the room that nobody wants to talk about. So yeah, thank you guys. Have a good week, and I'll see you in a couple days for an edited video, and I'll see you next Tuesday for another live stream. Till then, take care.